Hey, we're going to take a break from Romans, and we're going to go to the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah is a book that we went through in 2009. I don't know how many people were here at that time. Raise your hand if you were here in this church in 2009. Okay, man. The faithful, the few. Well, then I want to bring back a message because I enjoyed that so much. And, you know, Nehemiah was a leader, and there's a lot of leadership principles, but for all of us to strengthen our faith. Now, I've got a book here, and I'm going to leave it here so you guys can take a look at it, but probably one of the most significant books outside the Bible in the English language was written by John Bunyan called The Pilgrim's Progress. And I don't know if you've ever tried to read it in the old Elizabethan English. It's sometimes hard to get through, and maybe you stopped a couple chapters in like, whoa, I can't get through that. This is a good version for you because it updates the English language. It's got a lot of pictures. Everyone loves pictures. Illustrations. Gives you a break. And my wife and I and youngest daughter, we're reading it together and having an enjoyable time. And I'll leave it here if you want that version. It's a new version that came out. Very cool. But it's a story of the Christian life. And the main character of the story is Christian. That's his name. And Christian starts from the city of destruction, and he's making it to the celestial city, which is heaven, and the journey along the way is the Christian life. And so the allegory, you're going to find hill ups and downs and difficulties and dangers and victories, and it's all there, and you're going to find yourself in one of those episodes. It's just so encouraging to the faith. Christian starts his journey, and he has a big backpack on his back, and it makes it difficult to make his way toward the celestial city. But as the story goes on, he gets to this hill called the Hill of Difficulty. There's a cross at the top, and as he's heading toward the cross, sees the cross, that big backpack drops off. He calls it a burden. His burden drops off because it's all the condemnation of sin and guilt. It drops off his back, rolls all the way down the hill, never to be put on again. And he's got new faith. He's got a fresh perspective. He's just overjoyed. He thinks, wow, I can make it to the celestial city. The thing is, he's got new faith. It's untested faith. And the Lord wants to test his faith, to strengthen his faith like he wants to do in our life. So here's Christian. He keeps going. And you'd think that was the last hill you'd have to climb, but no, there are other hills. And he's climbing up this hill, and the day is starting to fade, starting to get twilight. And he's got to get to a place where it's a little safer. So he's going, man, Lord, I need to find a lodging place. And so he's cresting the hill. And as he crests the hill, two people are running at him like scared to death. And he stops them briefly to go, brothers, what's going on? He goes, they said, there's lions in the path. If you go any further, you're going to endanger your life. Run with us. So they run. And he sits there and he stands there and he goes, well, what do I do? Because if I go back, I can't go back. I feel like there's danger backward. Forward is danger. He keeps going. In faith, he keeps going. And he gets within sight of this house. It's the lodging place. But as he gets closer to the lodging place, he sees the two lions are right in between him and the lodging. And he gets a little closer and he's just about ready to run, about ready to turn around. And that's when the caretaker calls out to him and he says, is your faith so small? Fear not the lions, for they are on chains. And they are placed there for trial of faith where it is, and for the discovery of those who have none. Keep in the midst of the path, and no harm shall come to you. And so Christian proceeds forward cautiously, trembling, but believing that the caretaker has, said it correctly, and no harm was done. He passed right through it because the lion is on a chain. Both lions are on a chain, meaning they're in God's control. The lions are the trials and tests of life. That's what it's trying to depict. And even every trial and every test is hand-sifted from the Lord. It is his design to strengthen your faith. And commitment to God's path is tested by the lions, that threat of hardship or bodily harm or abandonment by friends. Because under pressure, the real you comes through. The real you comes through. That's what John Bunyan is trying to say through this, that it's going to test you what's in you. Is it real faith? And if it's real faith, where are you? How strong is it? You know, because you could be really strong when you come to church, right? You're around people who believe the same ways or singing loudly, because we can be really bold when it's safe. But what about when we go out and we're on our own, we're at school, we're at work, or whatever test comes our way? That's the test. It's easy, but when under pressure, the real you comes through. Nehemiah, okay? Nehemiah, the book of Nehemiah is the journal writings of a leader in the 5th century BC. He is a Jew. He is cupbearer to the king of Persia, and Persia is the reigning, world power at the time. So he has a privileged position. The cupbearer is the personal advisor. I mean, how he got there, it was the good hand of the Lord. But remember, Israel had been in exile, but at that point in time that he wrote the book, 2 waves of people of Israel, back to the promised land, went back to Jerusalem. They built the temple, and then Ezra and a bunch of people went back also, and Ezra started to teach the book of the law. Okay, so there are 2 waves of believers and Israelites that went back. Nehemiah didn't go back. And report came to him after a few months that things weren't going very well in Jerusalem. It was in disarray. And depicting all the disarray was the walls. There was no walls around it, so it was unprotected, and any enemy could come in and disturb and disrupt everything going on there. It's the city of God, right? It was the city of the great king, as the psalmist would say. It's where the localized presence of God dwelt in the temple, the Ark of the Covenant. And it's in disarray, and it just broke Nehemiah's heart. And maybe in that moment, he thought to himself, maybe there was regret, like, why did I stay here in my privileged position? I should have been with my brother, because his brother actually went on the second wave. And his brother comes back, and he's heartbroken. Well, he prays for an opportunity, and he gets one with the king, and he makes his request: can I go and rebuild the city of my family and the city of my people? The king grants it, gives him the resources, gives him even the cavalry to go back there. And so he's there to rebuild the wall, and they do it. He leads the people, rallies the people, and they build the wall in 52 days. It's an incredible study of leadership. However, he didn't do it because he was a great leader, but the good hand of the Lord was upon him. The walls was the least concern, really. He didn't know that. But when he got there, he is going to have more difficulty with these 3 guys who are really the power structures in place in that whole region. Sanballat, Tobiah, and Gesher. They were the strong men of that area. And they actually had made deals with the people of Jerusalem. They compromised the leadership. It was in total disarray. And they opposed Nehemiah. When Nehemiah laid out the plan, the people got excited. Most of the people were for him. But there were a few that were in league with these 3 men that did not want to see that wall, because it was a threat to their authority. It was a threat to their power. They couldn't allow Nehemiah to continue. And I remember in chapter 4, they come as they're finishing the wall. It was halfway done, but by God's good hand, it was a certain height. It needed to go way higher. And Tobiah, said, oh man, if a fox got on top of that, it's going to fall down. You guys don't even know what you're doing. They taunted them. And that didn't even set them off. That didn't even pull them back from the work. So rumors had it that the armies were going to amass and they were going to get killed. People in people in Jerusalem were going to get killed. And then there was rumors inside, like, we can't keep doing this. We're just exhausted, Nehemiah. There's no way we can pull this off, even though it's coming together, right? It's the fears within start to grow inside Jerusalem. But Nehemiah said, no, our God is awesome and great. Watch him battle for us. And then he stationed everyone on the perimeter wall. And they were building at the same time defending. So they had a trowel in hand, building the wall at the same time they strapped on a sword. And I love that picture because it's so much like the Christian life. We are fighting for what we're building. We're fighting and building. We can't do one or the other. We have to do both. That is the Christian life. It's a good fight of faith, but we're building into one another. We're building into this place so that we become stronger, be a greater testimony. And the Lord delivered them. That was chapter 4. Chapter 6, they're not done with Nehemiah because the wall is getting higher and higher, and they got one last chance to disrupt this thing before the wall is complete, and it's chapter 6. And so chapter 6, let me read it. Chapter 6, verses 1 through 14. I'll try to pronounce all the names right. Now, when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem, the Arab, and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me. So they didn't come personally. They had someone, a messenger come, sent to me and said, come, let us meet together at Hakaparim in the plain of Ano. And they intended to do me harm. And I sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work. I can't come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? Good answer. And they said to him 4 times in the same way. And I answered them in the same manner. In the same way, Sanballat, for the 5th time, sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, it is reported among the nations, and Geshem also says it, which is a funny way to say it. You know, he's like this tattletale or somebody, like sharing juicy news, that you and the Jews intend to rebel. And that is why you're building the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become the king. And you have set up the prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, there is a king in Judah. That's how you proclaimed a new king. And now the king will hear of these reports, the king being Persian king. So now, come, and we will take counsel together. See what they're doing? They're blackmailing. Then I sent to him, Nehemiah said, saying, no such things as you have said have been done, for you are inventing them out of your mind. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work, and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands. That's a good prayer. Now, when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, the son of Metatibel, who was confined to his home, he said, let us meet together in the house of God, within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. They're coming to kill you by night. But I said, should such a man as I run away? And what man such as I could go into the temple and live? I will not go in. And I understood and saw that God had not sent him. And he had pronounced the prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this purpose he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin. And so they would give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, according to these things that they did. And also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. So there was a whole cadre of prophets that were speaking falsely, getting paid to put Nehemiah in a really bad spot, a compromising place. But I love verse 15. I'll just read it, 15 and 16. But the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month of Elul. in 52 days. And when all the enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. Oh, man. Don't you want your life, like, people recognize that God is in charge of you. Like, God is up to something in you, because you, in the natural, wouldn't be able to accomplish these things. God is up to something. I want them to say that of our church. That church, God is in that place. I can't believe the things that are going on there. Yeah, because the good hand of God is on us. We want his name to be lifted up and shine. I love that. Here are these 6 attempts to take out Nehemiah. 4 of them were deception. 1 was blackmail. 1 was seduction. There's all these, enemy tactics that are snake-like. It's never direct. It's all these whispers and dissensions and stirring up and intimidations, rumors. But it's really the enemies that are timid. You read that at the end. They felt in fear because they realized God was in this place. And that's what is motivating these 3 men to do what they're doing, because they fear their power is leaving. Something is going on. But we have to remember that, the devil's tactics are like that. They're never direct. They're always whispering. They're always deceitful, stirring up dissension. But God is allowing Satan to do certain things, but not for the purposes Satan has in mind, but it is flipping it on its head, so it strengthens your faith and you run back to him close in dependence on the Lord. Because the devil trembles, because greater is Jesus in you than anything out there. Greater is Jesus in you than all the powers of darkness. The demons tremble before the Son of God, whose spirit dwells in you. Don't forget that. The demons tremble. Do you believe that? Because under pressure, the real you comes through. Under pressure, the real you comes through. You think about the story. So they're working on the walls. Things are going well. And this tactic of, hey, why don't you come out to the plains? Let's have a council together. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know if they thought that tactic would work. Maybe it was like a peace accord that they were trying to strike. And Nehemiah would have thought, okay, these guys have been really troubled. Maybe I should go out there and do this peace accord. Maybe they'll stay away from me. But the Lord gave him insight. Like, no, these guys are up to no good. I'm going to go out there and they're going to put me to death. I'm not going out there. But he had to say no how many times? 4 times. Some of us, we need to learn to say no. Because the pressure that I want to first talk about is the point number 1. It's the pressure to please others. The pressure to please others. That pressure came in and 4 times, and he refused 4 times. Under pressure, that real of you comes out. I mean, do you feel the pressure to please others? Can you say no? Let's practice right now. No. A little stronger. You got to have a little more conviction. No. Why is it so hard? I think it's because we don't want to disturb the peace, We don't want to make someone uncomfortable because they're asking and we feel bad, let's just say yes. But how many times does that get you in trouble? I mean, even in the most innocuous way as saying yes to something else, to your schedule. But in the end, what does it do? It crowds out the most important things, the things of God. So you don't even show up to church. You're not doing the things that you ought to do to grow faith. You need to be able to say, no. And with greater conviction, no. So if I say, hey guys, let's go out to the plains of, oh no, you say? No. You say, oh no, we ain't going out there. We're not going out there. Because Some of us run from, offending, displeasing, disappointing, the expectations of others, and it overtakes us, so we're almost like a marionette. We're like a puppet. We'll do whatever people pressure us to do, and that's not going anywhere good. It becomes a chokehold on it takes the spiritual breath out of us. William Grinnell, he was a Puritan, he said, "We fear men so much because we fear God so little." He adds this phrase, I love this: one fear cures another. The fear of God will cure the other. Another Puritan, John Flavel, he said, "By the fear of the Lord, men depart from evil, but by the fear of men, they run into evil." We must learn to say no. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And learning to say no, it starts with the people of God, really. There are Christians, and they're asking you to do certain things, and because you don't want to displease them, you're going to say yes. And you need to learn to say no to the family of God so that, it gets a little stronger and stronger, right? What about outside? What about to unbelievers? What about when you need to share your faith and you need to stand strong? Because if you can't say no or stand for truth with the people of God, how are you going to do it outside the camp? And how are you going to do it when the real life is on the line? Like some people like Nehemiah. It's incremental. So we learn to say no. So when a friend comes to you and says, "Hey man, there's a great party, you need to come." And in the back of your mind, you're going, if I go there, the last time I was there, good things didn't happen. I cannot go. You need to say no. You need to say no. And then after saying no, don't lie as to why you're not going. Okay? Don't get going and you did something good and then compromise your no, okay? Say no and don't make up, I have to go to a birthday. And you're not going to a birthday. You're lying. There's an opportunity to give glory to God. Now, you probably have to think about it before you get there. You probably have to say, no, I'm thankful that you would ask. I do appreciate our friendship, but the last time I went there, I'm too weak. And I don't want to do that again. I don't want to dishonor my Lord. Something like that would really honor the Lord. Now, they might not say something very commendable in that moment because they feel convicted. But I guarantee they'll walk away and say, I respect that person. I respect that person. And it might be the strength they need to get out of what they're getting out of, or maybe to come to Christ in the first place. But under pressure, the real you comes through. It comes through. That pressure of pleasing others. Nehemiah consistently refused to be ensnared. So you say no before you go out to, oh no. The plains of oh no. You don't want to do that. So he did it 4 times, and then comes more pressure. It steps up because now it's blackmail. Here comes a letter. And in it was written, "It is reported among the nations," it's a lie, and Geshem also says it, "and you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you're building the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become king. And you have set up the prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, there is a king in Judah. And the king will hear these reports. So now, come and take counsel with us." Now, why was that such a tightening of the pressure? Well, because treason would have been a sentence of death. It steps it up. And if that rumor were to get beyond the borders back to Persia, well, the Persian army's coming. And they might be able to defend their little, their encasement around the wall and against the rabble in the area, but not the Persian army. And not only that, the king has been very generous to Nehemiah. And he doesn't want to betray that relationship. Of all the people on earth, he certainly wouldn't want to displease the king. So that's a lot of pressure. And instead of caving in, he says, none of that is happening. None of that is happening. Okay? None of that is happening. And here, every attainment, here's another reason why it was pressurized. Because Nehemiah, by the good hand of God, got into that position. It was one of the most powerful positions in the whole world, right next to the king. But even though God has got us to the positions we're in, sometimes we'll hold on to it so tight and we'll compromise our faith just to have the attainment and the positions and the privileges that we have right now. It's that pressure to preserve your position. That's point number 2. That pressure is coming. And when the pressure comes, the real you comes through. Are you willing to let it go so that you can give glory and honor to God? Because people, they don't start out to compromise their faith when they first start, right? Oh, I hope I can. No, they don't do that. But the pressure comes, and they start to realize that if you hold those convictions, this is the cost. And with that in view, what do? What do I value more, my position or my confession? My career or my Christ? Is my conviction worth losing my position over? Because under the pressure, the real you comes through. And Nehemiah answers that. He said, there's no such thing going on. You guys are making it up in your mind. I'm not going to be fooled. Okay? But certainly he was afraid because he even prays, oh Lord, strengthen my hand. Strengthen my hand. The default mechanism is to preserve everything we've attained up until that point. And we can care so much about our reputation, what people think, and our possessions and positions, that it becomes an idol that we don't want to let go. And everything else is down below that, even our commitment to God. And that needs to be righted very quickly. You say, well, no, I'm not, that's not me. That's not me. Well, under pressure, the real you will come through, whether that's true. When you will lose your position, your favor with friends by staying true to your God, what do? Is my conviction worth losing my position and place over? And again, all of that you have to prepare for. Because you prepare for the times of crisis in your current position now. Are you using your current position to present Jesus? And what I don't mean is that at work as a manager, now you're a preacher. No, you need to do your very best work and bring great value to the company. But you don't just hold on to it. You don't want to lose it so you don't say anything about Jesus. No. That's putting your positions above Christ and his kingdom, who calls you to declare Jesus. Make him known. Because if it's not worth the risk now, it's not going to be worth the risk then. You prepare for those moments now, being faithful. Train your heart to prefer Christ by speaking of Jesus and the gospel regularly. Nehemiah was made of the same stuff, by the way, because again, like I said, he offers this prayer, Lord, strengthen my hands in this moment. Because if we're all honest, without the Lord's help, we're cowards. Strengthen my hand. You know, the Apostle Paul did the same thing in Ephesians chapter 6. He explains all of the armor of God. And at the end, in verse 19 and 20 of chapter 6, he says, and pray for me. Pray that I remain bold. And you're talking the Paul, was stoned for his faith, and they thought he was dead. He got up, and he kept on going. I mean, you are fearless. But it's not true. In every single human being, we want to preserve our life. We want it easy. And he says, pray for me, because I don't want to fold. I don't want to flinch. I don't want to cave in. I want to be bold all the way to the end. I want to give honor and glory to my God. Paul knew the pressure, constantly in danger, and Nehemiah knew the pressure, constantly in danger. Basic to human life is this pressure to preserve your good name, your position and also your own life. That's point number 3. That pressure to preserve your life. This is where it gets very personal in verse 10. Now, when I went into the house of Shemaiah. Shemaiah was a prophet. And he came to the house of Shemaiah, it says, who was confined to his home. So he must have been a trusted prophet. Confined to his home, I would assume that he was probably older, and maybe he was getting decrepit and couldn't move around, so Nehemiah came to him. But that would have meant that he was one of the most esteemed prophets in the city. So he trusted Shemaiah, came into his house. And it's interesting what happens because the enemy overplays their hand. Overplays his hand. Here Shemaiah says, you need to get into the temple. Let's go into the temple and let's hide. Let's go in there. People are coming to kill you. You know, if you hear that, I think you would want to respond. And he says, I'm not going to do that. Should I, such as a man as I am, run away? Should I go into the temple? Could I ever go into the temple and live? The reason why he said that is, I'm not a Levite. I am not a priest. I don't belong in the temple. If I go in there, I'm going to sin against my God. And going in there and running with my tail between my legs is certainly a bad testimony, and it's not going to rally the troops. Because in chapter 4, you know what Nehemiah was doing? Our God is awesome. He's going to defend us. The battle is the Lord. He's rallying the troops. And they feed off that strength and that courage, and they get strength to go out. But if their leader, they hear of their leader huddling in the temple, closing the windows, do you think they would want to rally for him? What's so despicable, though, is this is a prophet. Prophets usually lost their life for speaking for God. And this one was bought off to put Nehemiah to death and discredit him. Oh, that's deplorable. And there were more than just Shemaiah. These men who spoke for God, even a woman, Noadiah, a prophetess, was also speaking, falsely to get him to do sinful things. You see the level of leadership, the corrupt leadership within Jerusalem? I mean, Nehemiah came at a really low period. And he's trying to do the Lord's bidding. And he's trying to do the right thing. This prophet, Shemaiah, agreed with money to entice another man to sin, discredited his life. It was terrible. Terrible. Under pressure, though, the real you comes through. Thomas Paine, American revolutionary, he says this. I don't know if he was a believer, but he said, "'Tis the business of little minds to shrink. But he whose heart is firm, whose conscience approves his conduct, will pursue his principles unto death." And they were looking at, the British Army coming. How much do we believe in this kind of government and this kind of freedom in the land? Well, they were going to put it in blood. And we for a greater cause. Whose conscience approves his conduct, who's really convicted about this, will pursue his principles unto death. There was another man in history. Martin Luther. Not Martin Luther King. That was 1960s. And he was another man of courage. Go back further in the 1500s. Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther was a priest. He was a teacher in a university. And all he wanted to do was reform the church. He didn't want to cause this big split. But as he was reading the scriptures, it became clearer and clearer. Justification, being made right with God, is by faith alone. And let's not mix up works like we're trying to earn our way to God. No, it's by faith alone. And he gained more and more conviction on this. He was writing about it. It was getting spread through the Gutenberg press, which was like the internet back then. I mean, it was going out, and everyone was reading this stuff, not only in Germany, but all over Europe, all over the world. And the Catholic Church was getting very scared of this because their power base was leaving and people were questioning their authority more and more and more because of this strong individual. And Martin Luther knew it's going to come time where I'm going to have to seal this in blood. He had to know that. And he was writing to one of his ministerial friends, and he said to a friend, "Whatever may happen, I am not moved, because nothing can happen save or except in accord with the will of him who sits upon the throne in heaven, directing all. Let not your hearts be troubled. Your Father knows your need before you ask him. Not a leaf from the tree falls to the ground without his knowledge. How much less can any of us fall unless it be his will?" Whew. How can someone like Martin Luther and Nehemiah stand so strong when there's so much pressure to want to preserve their lives? Here it is, because they know that the lions are on chains. All of this is under the sovereign plan of God. I will not lose my life until the Lord wants it home. Not 1 second before. Not 1 second. It's in the Lord's hands. It's not in the enemy's hands. They cannot do one thing without the Lord's consent. And when it's time to go, it's time to go. And it's God's perfect timing. Here's a second quote. When asked whether he would be willing to present his grievances against the Roman Catholic Church in the presence of the emperor himself, he said, Martin Luther, "This is no time to think of safety. I must take care that the gospel is not brought into contempt by our fear to confess and seal our teaching with our blood." You see where the concern was? It wasn't to preserve my life. No, the concern was to bring the gospel into full view for everybody, to offer salvation to people. And I will drop my life for that purpose. More of those kind of people. We need that today. We need that today. It was Martin Luther who penned those lyrics. Let goods and kindred go, this mortal life also. The body they may kill, God's truth abide still. His kingdom is forever. That's conviction. That's all. We need that. But when the pressure comes, where are you going to place your faith? Is there any other rock but our God? It's like that song, "On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand." It would seem like I need to run to a friend. It would seem like I need to run to this or that or the other, or make a deal with the devil to get this temporary problem out of my way. There's really only one solid ground. It's on Christ the solid ground. On Christ the solid rock I stand. It's Christ. Don't you wish you could be like a Martin Luther or a Nehemiah? Or some great woman of faith? I do. Because all of us, but the real, honestly, everyone is a coward without God's help. Truly. I mean, honestly, how many times that Martin Luther had to go in prayer and fight it out with the devil out loud in his room, throwing things that he thought were where the devil was. I mean, he was animated because he had to work himself over his fears, over the things he loved, and we have to do the same thing. We are cowards without the Lord's help, but cowards can get help. You think about Apostle Peter. There were some awesome moments with Peter. He's the only one out of the boat walking on the water. Only one. He was the one that, who do people say I am? Well, they say this and that and the other. And he says, well, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, Holy Spirit, put that in your heart. And he said some really awesome, bold things. He said, everybody else is going to deny you, but I'm not. But he did, didn't he? And when the direct question came to him, and this is one of those things that comes maybe once in your lifetime, like, hey, you're one of them. Hey, didn't you follow Jesus? You have that Galilean accent. I remember you. Oh, no, not me, not me. 3 times. And you would think, Peter's washed up. How merciful of the Lord, the risen Christ, coming to him on the Sea of Galilee and asking him, Peter, do you love me? Well, it would seem by my actions I don't, but Lord, I do love you. And he says it 3 times, probably to counter the 3 betrayals. But the Lord brought him back. And it gives us hope, doesn't it? Because every one of us, when the moment we should have spoke the gospel, we should have told them what Christ has done in me, what Christ has done in you. We missed that opportunity, didn't we? Because we were self-preserving. But guess what? You get opportunities. You get more opportunities that come your way. Even cowards can get help by the Lord. Even Peter. Because what happens to Peter? Acts chapter 1 through 5. That guy is now in the face of all the leaders that put his Savior to death, saying, you betrayed, you put him to death, and sharing the gospel with every 5,000, thousands of people. That's Peter. But cowards got help by the good hand of the Lord, and that means all of us can have help by the good hands of the Lord. I'm so thankful for that. I'm going to ask the band to come up. We're going to finish with the Lord's Supper.